G'day everyone, and welcome back to another Audiovisual Distributors Tech Insight. My name is Justin. Today we have a video for you about AV Pro Edge's MXNET Video over IP 4K solution. Now, what we'll be focusing on with this particular video today is about the MXNET Mentor software that is located on the MXNET control box. This is essentially your gateway to configuring and controlling your MXNET 4K video over IP solution. So let's just jump straight into it and show you what it's all about in the MXNET Mentor software for AV Pro Edge. Okay, now we're going to do a bit of a quick overview of the MXNET Mentor software, which is on the MXNET control box included in the video over IP solution from AV Pro Edge. Now, the page that we're looking at right here is the home page, which is on the MXNET Mentor software with the C box. Now, from this point, it is good to note that there is a bit of a helping guide here for someone who's not very au fait with video over IP systems, especially the MXNET solution. And by selecting this tag, it's going to give you a user guide that looks exactly like this. Now, this quick start guide goes through a variety of subjects in multiple pages, and this particular page, for example, goes through what the hardware is and what the configuration processes are with MXNET. Now, as you proceed through this, you'll see there is step-by-step instructions and detailed configuration diagrams like this on how to connect the MXNET solution together, and the process of basic setup and how to configure the solution. Now, it's a very useful document. I highly recommend looking at it if you're dealing with the MXNET solution for the first time, or maybe as a refresher. Now, we're going to pop back to the MXNET Mentor software, and we're going to do this thing live on this operational system I have here at AVD headquarters. Now, first and foremost, we have the Home Utilities page. Now, this is a bit of a glossary over and setup location for the control box. So the Mentor port, which is the Mentor software that we're utilizing now, and in this case, the IP addresses. Now, at default, these will come as DHCP. You can change to static and obviously apply those changes once you've changed those. This is a little bit of detail about the network switch, and in relation to the AV Pro Edge network switches, these are all pre-configured VLAN ready to go for you to start your video over IP system, but the MXNET solution is also compatible with other third-party managed switches as well. So if you have a flavor you're accustomed to, you're more than welcome to use it. If you're a first-time user, I highly recommend using the MXNET switches because it creates a full plug-and-play video over IP 4K solution for you. Then we just go into this configuration process that we're going to go through, and your system will be off and running. So back to this page either way. Sorry about that little bit of a sideways tangent, but this is where you can see the details on what is set up on the MXNET control box as well as the IP switches. This is also a very useful page as well for updating firmware on the control box if required, encoders and decoders alike. And when you do select these, you can actually select all of those encoders straight away. Sorry about that, couldn't get into there at this stage. And once you've done that, you can push this firmware to all those endpoints at one time. Now, with the MXNET system events, this is where we can, yes, reboot the system and restore factory defaults on both sides of the system. That is on the MXNET control side, as well as the hardware encoder decoder devices also. So really nice page to see everything at a glance. So now we're going to pop into the configuration page. Now on this configuration page, as you can notice here by selecting that icon, we have inputs and outputs. Now, as we all know in IP systems, it's an encoder and decoder, all sources and displays. It's very self-explanatory as listed here on this configuration page. Now, configure is essentially it. This system is a configurable video over IP system. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to put this together in the IT world. It is something that is very straightforward. It's all in front of you, and with a little bit of understanding of AV, you won't have any issues at all in configuring this IP system.
Now, in relation to the custom name that you're seeing here is the authentication name for those encoders. Now, as you've seen from our previous video, there is an OLED display on encoders and decoders, and this is the title that you will see there if you have changed it. Now, you'll notice that this encoder underneath has not been changed. So what we might do is let's change the name of this. So we might get rid of this and let's call this DVD, for example. Now, once we've pressed enter on that, now you will notice here we have changed that to DVD. Now, this title will be located on that endpoint, so you'll know that that is the import device for that DVD player in the network. Now, you can have descriptions here, further description details if you choose to. It's entirely up to you. And the EDID management side is essentially what is coming in relation to the video resolutions. So what we might do, we might need to change this. We might want it to EDID management at 1080 or 4K 30. It's entirely up to you. There's quite a few here that you can see are available. You can also do a user EDID or copy from a loop or from the output, depending on how fussy your displays might be. All of these features are available because, as we have mentioned previously, the MXNET IP solution has scaling capabilities as well. Now you'll notice here channel icons, which is obviously authenticated by the network. We have the IP addresses of these particular devices, the MAC addresses of them, and what firmware versions they are running. And this is all at a glance. Now you'll notice here a particular icon here that says encoders lights all. Now this here is a very useful feature. If you had quite a large system, 10, 1600 endpoints, whatever it is in relation to encoders, we can simply press this, and by this saying flash, it will actually flash the endpoint that you've selected. And so if you're looking at a whole stack of encoders, by doing this, this will be the one that will be flashing at you. So it's very easy to distinguish which unit you need to play with or change or do some settings changes on. Now, if you didn't want to see lights on them, we can also turn them all off or turn them back on. So it's a very useful thing to have. Now, once we've done all these changes, you can actually save the config files, and that'll download the config that these are all set up on, so if you need to upload that down the track. So it's very nice to have this available to you. Now, on the output side of things, it is very much the same. We have the family room here that we have. Now, we might change this one here, just as a quick example. Let's say lounge. And we can go through and name each of these devices if we choose to. So it's very easy to change that description name. Output resolution, you might have TVs that might not be compatible with certain things, might be 4K 60, 50, 30, whatever it is, even 1080 in the kids' rooms. Well, we can change those details from this location, or we can have it pass through depending on how new your system is you've designed, and you might not have older TVs, all right? But this is available, so if we want to do this one, we might want to do this one at 1080p 60. And it's saying, you know, metadata if you want to retain or not. It really comes down to your system at the end of the day and what you select. Now you'll see IP addresses, the MAC addresses of each of these individual endpoints as well, and the OSD all, which was on the other as well. Now this is here for the decoding side, because if I select OSD on these, it will put all of this information you're seeing here on that display. So you know that you have the right decoders connected to the right displays in your system. So it's a very nice way as a checklist to go through those details, and it is extremely simple to use. What firmware revisions? Some of these firmwares may be different because there is different endpoints on the decoder side. Ones that we actually have full audio down mixing. So if you're dealing with Dolby Atmos and things like this, there's different things we can do. Sorry, that's more or less on the import side, but this is a way we can check those firmwares and update these as well. So in this case, we would look at updating these firmwares so they're all on the 4.1 version if need be. Now the decoder lights, which is very similar that you saw in the encoder, we can obviously select flash and off on those. This is probably more important in bedrooms, so if you don't want any lights flashing behind the display, because sometimes that could be annoying, you can turn those off right here, and then the endpoints will lay dark, still operational obviously, but there won't be any lights flashing or link lights or anything like that on those devices. So you can keep it nice and dark for the bedroom, so if you're watching TV at night time, you don't have these little flashes behind your TV. Now from this point, like I mentioned before, we have the same config. We can refresh this list when we've done that, but we can also have a look here at the diagnostics page. Now this is really nice because it gives you a very quick overview of what's going on in your system. Now The system that we're dealing with here, the MXNET solution, is very user-friendly and it's quite customizable in that sense. So what we have here, we have inputs, so our encoders. Now we've got the Foxtel, the network connection is good, 1 gig. But you notice here that this one here is running at 200 meg and this one here is running at auto, which is essentially full bandwidth for the system. Now, this is really kind of cool because what you can do is pull down the bandwidth requirements of an individual endpoint if desired, or you can put it back up to its standard processes, and now Foxtel will reboot. So that particular endpoint is now going to reboot into the system and be set at full bandwidth requirements. Now, the one that hasn't rebooted, you'll notice here that we've got 1920 by 1080. That's the HDMI video source coming into that unit. It's running no HDR, 8-bit, 2-channel PCM. We can do hot plug detection here, which is really kind of cool. This is kind of a reset. So instead of having to get into a rack and pull cables out and replugging them back in for sync and things like that, you can actually do it via this particular software, which is wonderful. And then you have, if HDCP is there as well, and then your encoder lights on your encoders and decoders all the same. Now, when we're looking at the decoding side, we have quite a bit of information here about the network is good, we're running all 1 gig, what resolutions we might be running. You actually see the HDMI video output sources, no HDR. There's a lot of information here that you can utilize and understand on how your system is working. As we know, Foxtel encoders can be quite fickle, so you can play around with a lot of these details to really make your system work well. If we had a lot of endpoints, you have multiple pages here where we can go through as well. Okay, so we're just going to close off that diagnostics page now, and then we're going to jump into the matrix side of things. Now, by selecting the matrix tag, this is where we're going to see everything that's available to us in relation to our import sources and our output sources. But what you will notice here that we actually do get a preview of our sources in the system. Now, and this is really quite unique because you'll be able to see if there's imports coming in and where we would choose to route those. So in this case, I'm going to select the DVD source, which is running this phishing show, you can see here, and it is going to 2 of these outputs. But let's say I might want to run it to the family room and the lounge. So you'll notice here that the name of the endpoints, we haven't changed these ones, but the family room and the lounge room are now running DVD, but I might want to run Foxtel in these 2 locations, or maybe just one of them. It's entirely up to you. So this is now your full matrixing of the system. So that's video and audio to those displays in the required areas. It's very simple to see. If we had more inputs, obviously, in relation to encoders, we can scroll up and down here, and it is a very simple process to be able to select those. And we select DVD, we can see what is highlighted and where that is. So very easy to manage and very simple to select. Now, the next part of this video, we're going to pop into the video wall side of things. So let's click on the video wall application here on our side, on our menu in our MXNET Mentor software. And this is where video walls come into play. Now, this is probably more on the commercial aspect in installations. Some people might be lucky enough and have a video wall in the residential space, but this can also be used for digital signage systems as well. Now, the video wall layout is really quite simple. What we can do is create a variety of video walls. So in this case, let's just do this quickly. We'll do a 2x2 video wall. And as we can see, we have 4 displays that have come up. Now we have an encoder list. Now I want to use the DVD player on all those. So we just roll over our source from our DVD player into each of these screens. Yeah, quite simple. But at this moment in time, we have not allocated what displays are there. So then we go to our decoder list, and in this example, we're just going to create a video wall out of this home system. We're going to use the lounge displays just as an example, and these 2 other decoders as well. And quite simply, we have created a video wall. Now, we can then, save these video wall layouts as well, what the video wall list is. Now, if I select this display here, we can put in the bezel sizes, etc., and save that system. Once we've done that, then we go generate video wall, and these displays that we have selected now become a video wall. It's that simple, and it's really quick and easy to do. And if you've got multiple displays around a venue, even for example, you can do multiple video walls. It's entirely up to you. Now, MXNet has just added in a brand new feature, which is really quite smart, and this has been developed for doing mosaic video walls. So the most challenging video walls of all. Not many systems can do this without having very expensive processing software. But it is now included in MXNet. Now, this is a little bit different. So a mosaic video wall, to give a bit of understanding of what that is a video wall that is not in your standard layout. It is something that is a little skew-if. Now in this case, we're going to do a 2x2 video wall here, and we might select a layout. So let's do a layout design. Now what we're seeing here is our 2x2 video wall, and this is essentially what it's going to look like. Now, we might want to move this display over here, we can do different things. We can move things all over the place. We don't have to have anything in any specific location. Let's pop that one down there for a laugh. See, it's very skew-if. We can flip and change things as well. It is really quite powerful. Once we've kind of made that arrangement, we're going to sync that left to right, and now it is mapped into whatever that input source we're going to deliver to it. Once we've done that, then we can select our encoders, very much like we did the other video wall, and decoders into each individual item here, and create a very obscure video wall. Very powerful tool, especially these days when people are doing some pretty neat things with video walls, putting them on different angles and different shapes. Well, this is software will enable you to have that flexibility. So it is extremely powerful in that sense. So going through these is pretty much gone through everything from our home utilities, our configuring of our endpoints, matrixing those endpoints for video distribution, and video walls. So the next part of this, we're going to jump into more of our advanced features. So let's get stuck into that for a moment. All right. So by selecting our central command icon here under our advanced tag in MXNet, what we will find here is our CEC, HDMI, RS-232 and IP commands area. So this is us giving us some control over the system, because as we know, all our imports do have obviously IP or RS-232 control or even IR. Now, by editing the control tag here, this is where we can select CEC, RS-232, obviously populate that with all the required protocols we need. Hex if needed, it's entirely up to you what you're using, and then IR IP as well is also available as here as well. So depending on your control commands, if you're doing more Resi based, you can do CEC. It's entirely up to you. All of these features are available within this system, and we can select those group members and names if you want global control. So it's very nice to be able to play around here if you want to go to that level. All right. Now, in the next section here, it's called independent routing. Now, this is really nice because what we have here is we have video distribution, right? As we can see, we select DVD player. It's now going to the family room and lounge, and Foxtel is going to these other two decoders that we currently don't have named. But we can select this and add this independent routing to this location. Now, DVD is going to this independent unit. But what we can also do is individually route the audio aspect as well. And that is really quite powerful, especially in commercial venues might use this a bit depending on what's running in the environment. But you can have lots of things, any video source on the display with a separate audio. We also have our IR routing here as well, and pass through, and for obviously control from this side as well, dealing with the IR side of things. So that's IR routing. So very simple at a glance to see. Select your source, which is your input source, and you'll see on the outputs where things are and how you wish to deal with the audio and video in this area. If you're not dealing with this, you could quite simply just use the auto matrixing tag like we showed you earlier and just change everything, and all will follow as required. Now we're going to step into the USB KVM side. This is something a little different. Now all of the endpoints do have USB capabilities on them, so if you need to have keyboard and mouse control on there, you can do so. Some of the USB ports can also deal with video like camera systems as well, but what we're touching base on is purely setting up that USB KVM type host system. Now to set that up, we would select the host device. So this is the encoding side, which is the Foxtel, which will have that USB B port on there, which plugs into a PC or something of that nature, and the USB A ports on the decoders are here, and this is one that is selected. And once you've selected these two, that link between those two has been created. So if you needed to control a PC in a rack or something from a room which is dedicated to that room, you can quite simply do that by setting up this config and multiple spaces accordingly. Now, when we log into this particular one called KVM Roaming, is quite a bit different. This is more or less designed for the commercial applications where we might want to set up a whole group of products. I've done a bit of a test here, so let's select that. And this is, a row of displays. One row or 4 displays, and this is where we can select these groups. So if you think of a control room, you might have 3 rows of tables with displays on them, and essentially we can control the host PC from any of these locations, and that's by simply dragging in your encoder and decoder to your required device. Pretty straightforward, but you do need to select one as a primary. So like if I select this one as primary, this is the keyboard and mouse control, which will be controlling that particular KVM hosted endpoint. So very powerful in relation to multiple displays having to, or some person having to control a central PC, and you can do these groups to make quick and easy access for multiple people. So it's really quite a powerful tool there as well. Now, the last icon we're seeing here on the MXNet Mentor software for the MXNet IP solution here from AV Pro Edge is the Decoder Custom Fallback Images page. Now, what this is the dedicated load screens on these endpoints when the system starts, or you may lose video or something of that nature. Now, your fallback logo is exactly that. It's the boot up startup image. You can have your own custom logo on there of your organization that you've put this in for your customer with your, call for service number and all that type of stuff on there. It's entirely up to you. And the other page is the no signal image. You can say, oops, there is no signal here. Please check that the input source is on, etc. You get the understanding here. This is where you can upload that information. Now, there is a forced image here as well, where you can force something. You can select all of the decoders and force individual images, which you can recall these presets from the API, depending on what you wish to do here as well. So the MXNet IP 4K solution from AV Pro Edge does have it all. It's doing everything from, your quick config page here for firmwares, you're configuring your endpoints, encoders and decoders, your matrixing, video wall layouts, central commands and controls, independent routing, KVM extension, and custom video, and all that type of stuff in relation to your images. Now, what you've noticed, it is definitely just a configurable system. It is very easy to use and is a very powerful tool. So if you're looking at utilizing a video over IP solution, I think MXNet will be a very good choice for you for its simplicity of operation, flexibility. The MXNet Mentor software is very easy to use, and it is extremely reliable, which is wonderful. And the best part about the system as well, you can plug and play. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to install it. So that there is my quick overview on the MXNet Mentor software for AV Pro Edge from the control box within the video over IP solution from AV Pro. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and we'll get back to some more information.
Alright, so there you have it. It's quite a bit of detail around the MXNet Mentor software, which gives you all the configuration, all the control over the MXNet 4K over IP system from AV Pro Edge. I hope you've enjoyed this video today. It's quite a bit of information just on how the configuration process works with the MXNet solution. If you want to know more details or download some specs, definitely get those from the details below from our website. We have a bunch of information available there for you, from data sheets to the ecosystem in its entirety, including all the encoders, decoders, wall plates, and everything else that comes with the system. We've done another video on our YouTube channel about the MXNet componentry, so definitely have a good look at that. If you have any questions or queries, reach out to our sales team with the details below here at sales@AV Distributors as well. If you know our BDMs in person, definitely give them a call and say that you might want to have a look at the system. We do have a demo system we could show you, and you can have a bit of a play with it to get your head around the MXNet solution in general. So I guess from this point I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much for taking the time once again here at our Audiovisual Distributors YouTube channel and checking out our tech insight on the AV Pro Edge MXNet IP solution, and I look forward to seeing you at our next tech insight. Take care.